Hello and welcome to this special Saturday, September 13th edition of the North Shore Drive podcast. I'm Chris Carter. He's Brian Batko. We're your Steelers writers. And as always, we bring you all the content here on your podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoyed. Subscribe to this channel to get all of our daily content that comes out from all of our sports writers here at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. We're going to give you a preview look at the Steelers facing the Seahawks in week 2. Steelers 1-0, Seahawks 0-1 going into this matchup. As always, the show is brought to you by Edgar Snyder and Associates. Be sure to call them if you ever need help with workers' compensation, because when you've been hurt on the job, it's the insurance company, doctors that decide when your benefits are kick in, when your treatments are over, when your benefits are over. You need someone on your side. That's why you call Edgar Snyder and Associates at 1-800-94-EDGAR, because they'll fight for the workers' compensation rights you deserve. And remember, there's never a fee unless they get money for you. Brian, we could talk about Aaron Rodgers, we will later, and I know there's some people that want to talk about the DK Metcalf revenge game. He's playing the team that traded him away. But I think there's a lot of eyes on this defense after week 1. This is supposed to be one of the best defenses in the NFL. And they didn't look like it, giving up 32 points to Justin Fields and the New York Jets in his first game with a new team, with a new head coach, with a new OC, and a lot of young players on offense. And so now there's a lot of doubt about whether this defense can be one of those top tier units. Can they even be a solid unit after that performance? But we've been in the locker room all week. What's been the sense that you've gotten from talking to a lot of the defensive guys?
Yeah, I think it's more so about them than it is about the Seahawks because, like you said, they go from a team with completely new staff, new quarterback, to a team with a completely new offensive staff, new quarterback, second-year head coach, Mike McDonald. But my point is there's still not a ton of data to go on with what this Seattle attack is going to look like with Sam Darnold and Clint Kubiak calling the shots there as their offensive coordinator. They didn't get much going at all in their opener against the 49ers, but there's cold comfort in that if you're the Steelers because they have a lot that they need to fix in their own house defensively. Now you're dealing with some injuries as well. Deshaun Elliott out, and Juan Thornhill and Chuck Clark. I like those guys as steady veterans, but that wasn't the plan in the secondary. And honestly, if they're playing a lot back there, I'd say it's a fairly run-of-the-mill safety tandem at this stage of their NFL careers. And Jalen Ramsey, of course, is a versatile chess piece that you can move all around. But Joey Porter Jr. Has a soft tissue hamstring injury that we'll see what that means for him in the cornerback unit. So there are a lot of question marks. I haven't even gotten to the run defense yet with how leaky that looked against the Jets. I don't know if they're going to change things schematically, change things personnel-wise, but the Seahawks, if they're trying to take advantage of that, you'd think they're going to try to pound the rock and shorten this game a little bit and take the Acrisure Stadium crowd out of it.
Now, here's the thing is that we talked to Mike Tomlin and Terrell Austin. Terrell Austin saying he felt like this was nothing like what happened, or I think Mike Tomlin said there's nothing like what happened in Baltimore
When they too.
I mean, so and I get that. I think there were some differences, but at the same time, you still have to find answers to be able to stop the run. And this is now a team that's going to come at you with Kenneth Walker, who is a very dangerous running back, and Zach Charbonnet, who's no slouch either. And to me, this needs to be the week that says, hey, okay, last week it was just a rough week. We had some different things just kind of got in the way of what we were actually trying to do. Now we're going to be able to set the tone here because whereas it was exciting to see Aaron Rodgers throw 4 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, and the offense to put up 34 points, I don't think you can bank on that all season long, without, extra turnovers and without the defense kicking in. This team needs to still be a defensively led team where the offense can make plays. And that's what I'm sitting here saying, okay, you got to show it in a real game. We've seen it in practice. We've seen it on paper. We need to see it in real life.
Yeah, no doubt. And, I saw something online of kind of what the 49ers were able to do against the Seahawks that, kept them from really popping anything in the ground game. It seemed like they were shifting their defensive fronts a lot, kind of right before the snap. Will the Steelers employ a strategy like that? I don't know. Will they have Nick Herbig back? It looks like it. That he's more of a pass rushing dynamo, but, there are some different creative wrinkles that you can throw at a team in week 2 when it's still early in the season. You're not getting anybody back on the defensive line. Derek Harmon remains out. But could you work Nick Herbig into some packages somewhere? We saw TJ Watt line up over the A gap sort of as an off-ball linebacker at one point against the Jets. I just think that it's time to get creative. We talked about this in the offseason, Chris. You're bringing in all these intriguing outside pieces for your defense, but you don't really see their full benefit unless the coaching staff kind of takes a step back, thinks about some different ways to do this, and avoids the possibility of the Steelers defense becoming predictable, especially over this, it was only a 5-game losing streak to end the season, and then a season opener this year that could have very well gone the same way if not for some offensive and special teams heroics.
That's true. That forced fumble was huge because it allowed the Steelers to get a touchdown and get another one right after that. I agree with you. This defense needs to step up, and particularly some of the younger guys need to step up, and older guys need to too. I'm not taking away from TJ Watt needing to be a playmaker, though. I did think TJ Watt did what he was supposed to do for the most part. Against the run, he was in the backfield a bit, but they need the Keeanu Bentons. They need they need the Peyton Wilsons, the Patrick Queens. They need those guys to step up, especially against the run. If that happens, I think you put this Seahawks team behind the sticks. You put them in a position where Sam Darnold has to hold on to the football. I mean, and it was just last week, but last week he targeted Jackson Smith-Njigba 13 times and he caught it 9 times. And that's going to be a thing that certainly that the Seahawks try to replicate. And if you're the Steelers secondary, you can't allow him to take over the game. I think you have to force Sam Darnold to look at other people. You have to say, hey, throw it, check it down to the backups, check it down to your third wide receiver, your second tight end, your running back, and do it in a way where the Steelers are staying in front of the ball. If they stop the run, I think all of that becomes much easier for the Steelers on defense, and that needs to be what sets the pace in this game. If they do, they can win this game without that. But I think if they go a second game where the defense struggles, it's going to just continue those questions. We're going to be asking the same things next week, and then eventually this will catch up with them when they play another really good offense that has a premier quarterback at the position. I know they got Drake May and they got JJ McCarthy coming up after that, and then Joe Flacco after that. But eventually, when you get to the Joe Burrows and the Josh Allens and Lamar Jacksons, which they have all on their schedule this year, those guys will rip your head off if you're not playing a game on your defense, and that's what this team is built to be able to do.
Justin Herbert too, but yeah,
Herbert.
I think TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith, you saw them knifing into the backfield at times for some run stuffs. We can't absolve Cam Hayward, and I know he didn't absolve himself either. I mean, he needs to shed blocks and defeat offensive linemen too. It always starts up front against the run, and that's a big reason why the Steelers have been so good at it for the most part in his career. But it's time now to get back to that after an offseason in which Cam was not as involved as he normally is. I know he said that's not necessarily an excuse, but he did also mention knocking off some rust. So fans aren't going to want to hear that. They're just going to want to see you whoop up on Gray Zabel, Seahawks first-round pick, rookie left guard when he gets any one-on-ones. And, if there's 4 hands on him, Keeanu Benton, Yahya Black, they need to whip one-on-one blocks up front too. So, I mean, the Seahawks, I think, it was interesting that they did come out with that kind of game plan against the 49ers. I don't necessarily know what to expect from them come Sunday. Sam Darnold is somebody who he was thriving last year in Minnesota, but avid viewers of our show last year knew that I was pretty much always picking against him and the Vikings, even when they were leading the NFC North and looking like a buzzsaw. I just felt like he was going to become the same old Sam Darnold at some point, and he didn't look good in the wild card playoff loss to the Rams. He got strip sacked in that game for a touchdown return. Last week against the Niners, he gets strip sacked inside the 10, and that cost them that game in his Seahawks debut. He was really good, actually, against pressure and against the blitz last season, but that was in Kevin O'Connell's offense. Now we'll see how he fares in Clint Kubiak's offense. But the bottom line is, I think, if you do get to him, make sure you bring him down and, make sure he doesn't have a chance to pick you apart when he's, got those open reads. So I'm still not a Sam Darnold believer. I think the Steelers can have a good day against him, But you're right. If they're not one-dimensional, then that's a lot of help for Sam Darnold. And suddenly, that running game can elevate him and won't put him in harm's way against Watt, Herbig, Highsmith quite as much.
I agree. I mean, what got him going in Minnesota, in my opinion, was he had highly talented receivers in Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison. He had a good offensive line that allowed the run game to flourish. They gave him time. You have to minimize those things. You take away those things, you force Sam Darnold to just beat you with just his ability to see the field and his arm. I think you'll force him into some mistakes that'll allow this secondary that you've invested a lot into to make some plays on the football and be able to get some turnovers, set the pace of this game, and then give your offense plenty of opportunities to build up a lead on the scoreboard. We'll talk more about this and what the offense has to do and give you our final predictions here on the North Shore Drive podcast from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Chris Carter, Brian Batko. Stick with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the North Shore Drive podcast. Chris Carter, Brian Batko, your reporters from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, covering the Steelers, giving you a look before their Week 2 matchup at home, their season opener against the Seattle Seahawks. As always, this show is also brought to you by Goldberg, Persky & White. If you are diagnosed with mesothelioma or lung cancer, call your local attorneys at Goldberg, Persky & White. For over 40 years, their firm has represented thousands of lung cancer and mesothelioma victims. Call 1-800-COMPLEX or visit gpwlaw.com for a free consultation. Brian, let's go over the offense real quick here. This is a defense that does have some weapons on it. Devin Witherspoon, of course, a highly drafted cornerback. Reek Woolen, another guy that has respect in that secondary. But they do have a defensive line with Byron Murphy, Jerron Reed, guys that are talented up front. But I do think this is a week where the Steelers offense can again attack the middle of the field. They use their tight ends somewhat last week, but I think this is the week where you can really get after it with your tight ends. Witherspoon is very much a talented and physical player, but he's smaller. And this is a week where I think that with the size from guys like DK Metcalf, Pat Freiermuth, Jonnu Smith, Darnell Washington, that might be a big advantage for the Steelers to take advantage of, and especially Aaron Rodgers, who can pretty much see what he wants and take advantage of it so long as he has time in the pocket.
Yeah, I mean, Witherspoon, I think he was 5'11 and a half at the combine, so it's not like it's Mike Hilton out there in the slot. And as we're recording this Friday morning before practice, Chris, especially before Seahawks practice, I don't know what time they get going in the 3-hour time difference there, but Witherspoon didn't practice Wednesday or Thursday with an injury. So if they're missing him, and they signed Shaquille Griffin from their practice squad to the 53, he's a veteran corner. So they're banged up in the back end, but regardless, Mike Tomlin talked about the secondary being the strength of their team on Tuesday. I think you could argue that, the front four, front three plus the edge rushers are a strength as well. I think the inside linebackers are question marks for sure. Tyrese Knight and Ernest Jones. So yeah, it could be a big game for Aaron Rodgers to pick them apart over the middle, but he's also going to need some time and space to do that. I think if you look at this Seahawks pass rush and the way that they can come at you in waves, sort of reminds me of Ravens teams of years past when Mike McDonald was their defensive coordinator. They didn't necessarily have the Terrell Suggs or TJ Watt pass rusher who was so dominant. It was more so a collective, a team effort to create pressure, and you never necessarily know where it's going to come from, and you're adding in some creative blitzes. So, yeah, I mean, Boye Mafe, Leonard Williams, DeMarcus Lawrence coming over from the Cowboys, Byron Murphy as an interior rusher. That's a little bit worrisome, I think, the way we saw Aaron Rodgers and his lack of protection play out as one of the few Achilles heels of the offense in week 1.
I agree. It's something that should worry the Steelers. It's something they need to be focused on and ready for this game. And to your point about Devin Witherspoon being questionable, one thing I was talking to Seattle Seahawks expert Corbin Smith this week, and he told me that like Reek Woolen doesn't have a solidified spot in the start as a starting cornerback because he's been underperforming. So
yeah, he struggled last week.
They have questions in their secondary, but this is not a juggernaut team. This is not a super team. This is a team that has weaknesses that you can exploit if you get your basics done. And so you got to protect it against your weaknesses. Last week, one of the weaknesses on offense was pass protection. And so, like you said, Mike McDonald, he's going to send those fake blitzes where they're lining up in one gap, but they're coming from another, and it's going to test Broderick Jones, Troy Fautanu, Mason McCormick, Zach Frazier, and their communication skills, and they're being able to say, hey, they're lining up this way, but be prepared to react and take away certain gaps so that there's no one that gets clear shots at Aaron Rodgers. And then on top of that, like you said, these are talented guys up front. Byron Murphy, a highly drafted guy years ago that was quick. Leonard Williams, who's been an experienced guy in the NFL for years. Same things for DeMarcus Lawrence. Same thing for Jerron Reed. All four of those guys are going to bring it up front, and you have that on top of those fake blitzes that could send heat from anywhere. It's going to test guys. And I thought the one thing that I thought that the Steelers offensive line did get right last week was they at least knew where they were supposed to be most of the time. I'd say like 9 out of 10 plays. There weren't times they were looking around like, oh wait, where'd that guy come from? They were just getting whipped, and that's the problem that could arise again this week. They cannot allow themselves to get beat. They got to use their hands properly. They got to win with technique. If they do that, Aaron Rodgers will have time, and I think with the Steelers playmakers on offense, they'll have an advantage if it's just like basically 7-on-7 football when the Steelers are throwing the ball, and that's the ideal situation when you have a guy like Aaron Rodgers who can pick apart what defenses are doing and make good decisions and consistently make good throws.
Arthur Smith isn't coming in here to run the air raid, so there does need to be an element of the running game, which was missing week 1. If you do allow this Seahawks pass rushers to just pin their ears back, then no amount of hand placement and technique is going to help you if you have a free rusher, or if those guys are just teeing off on you snap after snap and you're behind the sticks and you're not on schedule in your possession. So I don't know if this is the week they get it going with Jaylen Warren and Caleb Johnson. It doesn't seem like he's too much in the picture right now. So if the Steelers can run the ball, that would take a lot of pressure off of Aaron Rodgers in his Acrisure Stadium debut. But I just don't have a ton of faith in that, Chris, based on what we've seen, not just against the Jets last week in East Rutherford, but really throughout camp, really throughout the preseason. I guess I'll ask you this. What do you think this run game is missing right now, if it's missing anything? Do you think it's more about those guys blowing guys off the ball and getting some push? Or, when you just quickly look at it, are Jaylen Warren, Kenny Gainwell, Caleb Johnson, are they a little bit less, are you a little less enthused with them than we thought at one point here?
I think that there's still talent in this running back room to be exploited. I think the big thing, as you're pointing out, though, is this offensive line has to push people off the ball. They have to create space. This is not supposed to be a dominant running back group. It's supposed to be an interestingly young group that could make some plays if given opportunities. But this is they haven't put 2 first-round picks into this running back room. They put it into this offensive line. They don't even have they have their top 3 picks on the offensive line are higher than any of the investments in the running back room. Jaylen Warren, undrafted. Kenneth Gainwell, a rather cheap free agent addition. Their highest pick is Caleb Johnson, who's a 3rd-round pick rookie. They need this offensive line that they've invested in to be efficient and to block well. And I'm not saying they have to be elite right now, but this is a year for, I think, Pat Meyer to show that this group can come together, can coalesce, can figure out, hey, when we're looking to block here, can we do it at the exact right time? Because timing is so important. When you're an offensive line and you're collectively executing, a trap block or you're doing a zone, it helps to have everyone stepping on the same foot at the same time, making contact with guys at the exact right moments, because then defenses can't counter against you as much because across the board, you're being consistent. That's what this group has to do up front. They do that. I think Jaylen Warren, Kenneth Gainwell, Caleb Johnson, if called upon in this game, can run through the open lanes, and then that'll allow that. I don't see much of a vision problem for the running backs just yet. I think that there was a problem with just the blocking. If they get the blocking done and then we see that there's a vision problem, then we'll come to that. But right now, to me, this is about the O-line and needing to get the basics done up front.
I guess when I think back to late July or early August from our shows and articles previewing the offense until now, second week of September, I probably did expect Caleb Johnson to be to have more of a role in this backfield. And it, as we watch the preseason play out and Jaylen Warren gets paid, some of the hype lessened, but still, I don't think I expected 2 snaps and 1 carry for him in his first game as a rookie. So maybe that'll come along with time, maybe even as soon as this week. But yeah, I think when you start looking at the backfield as more the Warren Gainwell show, It doesn't feel quite as much like a group that can establish the run and really control a game. But hey, maybe Warren will be more involved this week. Maybe he'll outsnap Kenneth Gainwell, and maybe playing at his home field will light a fire a little bit, and we'll see some of those signature Jaylen Warren runs.
Maybe we will. Let's look at this game and give some predictions here. Our sponsors at FanDuel have the line right now. Steelers are 3-point favorites at home. Money line sits at minus 154. Steelers plus 130. Seahawks. The over-under is set at 39.5 point. Get all those odd ends and lines from FanDuel.com to make your bets today. Brian, let's talk about this game. What is the X factor you think is the most important aspect of this game? How do you see this game playing out, and what's your final score prediction?
As much as I'm thinking of maybe saying protecting Aaron Rodgers, because we could see this go south quickly if he doesn't have any time to throw, you're going 3 and out, you're punting, potentially even opening yourself up to turnovers. I think it is not allowing Seattle to dictate the way this game's going to go with their run game, because their receiver core, outside of Jackson Smith and Jigba, like, it doesn't scare you too much. Now, maybe Cooper Kupp will find the fountain of youth in week 2 and show that the Seahawks made the right call. I generally think when the Rams move on from someone, especially a franchise great, they probably know that the gas tank is closer to empty than full. So I don't necessarily worry about Cooper Kupp the way I did when he was in LA. Their third receivers, I think Torrey Horton, a rookie. So this isn't a super deep group on that side of the ball. If you were facing a different personnel, maybe I'd feel a little bit more concerned about Juan Thornhill and Chuck Clark as your safety tandem with no Deshaun Elliott. But, all that kind of goes out the window if Kenneth Walker's ripping off 8, 10, 12-yard runs, if Zach Charbonnet is converting in short yardage all the time. And again, you're shortening that game. You're increasing the margin for error for somebody like Sam Darnold under center. And that's where I think the Steelers could get into some trouble. And it keeps a team that I think is lesser on paper in the Seahawks, in striking distance of potentially winning this one. However, that said, I'm going to go with the Steelers winning this one, but I don't think they blow them out. I'm going to say by a field goal. I'll go Steelers 25, Seahawks 22.
I hear you in that. I think that, like you said, the run game is very important on both sides of the ball. They can allow the Seahawks to set the pace of this game. I think the defense gets a chance to set the pace of this game. I think that not having a real running threat at quarterback will allow.
Let me tell you this though, Chris, really quick. I forgot to mention this in my little spiel there. Jalen Milroe is the Seahawks backup. Now,
True.
I don't know if they want to take Sam Darnold off the field at all, let alone often, but if they liked what they saw from Justin Fields or Lamar Jackson last year, I'm just it's in the back of my mind that a Jalen Milroe read option package could be an option for Seattle this week. And I'm sure the Steelers are preparing for that.
If I'm the Seahawks, I'm at least trying it. I'm at least giving it to me. You've now seen in back-to-back games, literally from the Ravens last year to the Jets this year, it's a problem for the Steelers. And so if I'm from the Seahawks, I have that package in. I throw it in on some second and third downs. And maybe if I get to the goal line, it's like something that I exclusively use until they prove me that they can stop it. So I agree, but I think that's the thing though, is that when Sam Darnold's on the field, they won't have to worry about that as much. I think that'll allow them to stop the run a little bit more consistently. Guys will feel less worried about gap containment, and say, hey, let's be more aggressive, let's attack. And that'll allow them to set the tone a little bit. I do think this game gets close. I do think that eventually the Seahawks make some plays. I think the Aaron Rodgers does deal with some protection issues again, not as much as last week, but certainly enough to keep the Steelers in check. But I do think this is a Steelers win. I'm going to say 27-21 Steelers. Aaron Rodgers doing enough to give them a solid lead, and the defense getting a turnover to seal the game in the end.
Yeah, it'd be a real downer if the Steelers lose their first home game with Aaron Rodgers, DK Metcalf, Jalen Ramsey, all in the picture. But yeah, I mean, both sides dealing with some injuries in key places. So, you never know if one of those factors will play into it as well. I mean, if Joey Porter Jr. can't go or is limited, I think you'll see Brandon Echols out there a decent amount for the Steelers. And, Mike Tomlin was really high on him and really complimentary of him throughout camp, even knowing that he was going to be a backup. But at that position, never hurts to have depth, and it could be as soon as week 2 that they actually need to throw Eccles in there and have him sink or swim as a cover man at corner.
Absolutely. Get all of the continued coverage on the Steelers and their week 2 season opener against the Seahawks at post-gazette.com, where myself, Brian, Ray, and Jerry will all be writing all throughout the weekend to get you ready for the game. And then, of course, all your post-game reactions right here on the podcast network. We have Ray and Jerry from the stadium. We have Adam and Paul at home giving you the live stream. And then you'll have all of our thoughts written in the Post-Gazette, and then we'll be back Monday with more episodes of the North Shore Drive podcast. Get it all here with the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, post-gazette.com. Find us here on your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoy it. Subscribe to this channel to get all the daily content from all of our writers here at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. We'll see you Sunday at Acrisure Stadium. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the North Shore Drive podcast from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. If you watch this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. For all the sports coverage from the Post-Gazette that we have to offer, visit post-gazette.com.